Hi, this is Jim Musser with Upstream Ministries, and welcome back to Views from Downstream. I'd like to pick up where I left off on Monday, and I was talking about as a counselor, we'd often make the observation that the first step to solving a problem is to realize you have one. And I talked about that applying to the local church in raising kids spiritually because often local churches don't understand that there's a problem. And if they do, it's a problem with other churches, but not their own. And I would maintain, just from my experience, many years on campus, is that there's a lot of denial of how much of a problem this is among local churches and even parents. And I want to share another story. We had a young man that was involved in our ministry, became a leader, and late in his sophomore year, he got in touch with me and he said, "Jim, can I get your help in learning how to study the Bible?" Now, this young man had grown up in a Christian home, had grown up in a church, which his motto was Matthew 28, to go into all the nations and make disciples. And so this young man, by all measures, should have known how to study the Bible, having been in that church his whole life and grown up with Christian parents. But he didn't. He didn't have an idea how to study the Bible. And so we began to do that together. But later on, I happened to be in the city where this young man's church was and talked to one of the pastors. And I thought it was a good opportunity for me just to maybe give him an idea that things weren't quite as good as he thought they might be and how effective their church was in creating disciples. And so I mentioned him, this young man, and the fact that he had come to ask my help in learning how to study the Bible. And the pastor's response was to say, well, he really is not giving himself enough credit. He's just young and he's trying to figure things out, but he really knows. And I didn't say anything, but I just thought to myself that this pastor is in denial, that he is so invested in the way in which they approach raising up young people to follow Jesus that he can't admit that maybe there needs to be some change. And I think that pastor is symbolic of so many churches and the leaders, is that when they're faced with the actual evidence that maybe their programs, their approach is not being that effective, they want to deny it. And that's the biggest problem, is that it's obvious to anyone who works on campus that is ministering to these young people as they come to them as 18-year-old freshmen, that these young people are not being trained spiritually in a way that you would tend to assume, given that they're in this environment their whole lives. And so it's just very important that if we're going to change things, we have to be honest about what's really happening. And that's part of the problem, and that's why I'm so emphasizing discipleship from a very young age. Because even if we recognize the truth about where our kids are spiritually once they leave high school, that doesn't change the problem. That just maybe would spur us to action. But the action is not trying to make a better youth ministry or do better in children's ministry, but it in reality is getting parents discipled, and so they can disciple their kids. That's the point. But until we are convinced there's a problem, there's going to be little change, and that's what I'm trying to bring to your attention, to anybody in church leadership, their attention, that it's not as good as you think it is. And I don't like being the bearer of bad news. I don't want to be negative, but this is the reality that those of us on campus deal with. Now, kids can grow and they can mature on campus. God is at work, and I saw some just major transformations in young people. But that doesn't change the fact that the discipleship should begin very young, and it should begin at home. And we can look at the exceptions and how people turn out, how young people turn out better than maybe we thought they would, given the circumstances. But that doesn't change the baseline for us, that discipleship is to be the first responsibility of parents, and the church is to be there to help and supplement their efforts, but not take the lead in it. And so you'll hear this over and over again, and hopefully it will begin to sink in and begin to have some impact of really changing what we're actually doing and to what we need to be doing. So I'll leave it there, and we'll talk a little bit more on Friday about this and what more we can do to make this happen. In the meantime, have a great day, and we'll see you back here on Friday.